Hare Krishna. We're here. We're back. It's Saturday afternoon, and we are going to be talking about the habits of ineffective people. And we are talking about, we are talking about the fourth behavior, which is blame. You blame people. And we're going to be reading some things that Prabhupada said about this and discussing blame in relation to becoming Krishna conscious and how it's really something very much affected by the mode of ignorance. In previous classes, I was saying that when you're dealing with any kind of dysfunction, ineffective behavior, it's generally linked to the mode of ignorance. Maybe the mode of passion a little bit, but usually ignorance. So, hold on. More light, right? Yeah, a little more light. It's generally linked to the mode of ignorance. So, as we study these dysfunctional behaviors, you can see they're very much pulling us into, mode of ignorance is a very dysfunctional place. So that's the idea. So we're going to discuss that today. And last week, you remember, we discussed emotional control and how some people have spiritual behavior, but not always emotional control. Some people are advanced, but not always as emotionally controlled as you would expect. And so that was kind of a controversial thing to say, and might seem to some borderline offensive. How can you say an elevated devotee may not have be totally emotionally controlled? Well, I did say they were elevated devotees, but many devotees are elevated, but not perfect yet. So by Prabhupada's mercy, we're all being elevated, but perfection is also maybe in the distance a bit. So, and we're all conditioned souls, and we all have a nature. Some are very peaceful, some are very angry, some are very accommodative and appreciative, some are very demanding. It's nature. So it does come out. And so the better we are at controlling our nature, so that it doesn't get the best of us, the better it is for our Krishna consciousness. And so sometimes, even though we're very strict and disciplined in our spiritual life, we may not be so aware of our conditioned nature and how it's having a detrimental effect on us. Then I think even maybe more common, how it's having a detrimental effect on others. So that was just an observation. It was not meant to be a criticism of anyone. It was just a reality that we're all struggling. Even though we're doing well in Krishna consciousness, there are aspects where we all have weaknesses as conditioned souls. And we need to be aware of those weaknesses. We need, obviously, to admit them. And we need to address them in ways in which we can properly deal with them and overcome them. And sometimes those ways are, you could say, adjuncts to the direct process of Krishna consciousness, where you need to focus on certain aspects of yourself, where you need to become a little more aware and learn strategies to improve. Now, I know some devotees maybe are resistant to that idea, but I would say that it's something that is not separate from bhakti. And because anything you're doing to improve your devotional service, it can't be separate from bhakti. The only argument some would give is, the method you're using may not be necessary. That may be the argument. And to that, one could reply, give me a method that's more in line with our shastras and our gurus, but I haven't found that method, so I'm applying some other method I learned to help me deal with something. Whatever it is, my prejudice. I'm very prejudiced. I was raised in a prejudiced family. Or it could be that my Krishna consciousness is not that strong. So even though I should be able to overcome my prejudice, I'm not, because my bhakti is not strong, and I'm adopting other processes that will also help me, other strategies or ways of looking at it. I don't know if I mentioned to you, but they have this virtual reality where you can become somebody else. So you put glasses on, and you're looking at a screen, and then there's this person in the screen, and everything you're doing, that person is doing, and you lose the sense of your physical body, and you become that body. And so what they do is they take a white person, and on the screen will be a black person. And so now that white person is black, and all her friends are black. But this white person never had any black friends, obviously never had a black body, never had any black friends. And after they do this exercise, the people say, I never realized how prejudiced I was and how different I feel being. It was like I was in the body of a black woman, and I feel different, and I feel empathetic, and these other ladies who are my friends who are also black. It was a very unusual experience, but it shed light on how much prejudice we have within us, and we all grow up with prejudice. So you become a devotee, like I often say, you become a devotee, and you bring a suitcase, and what's in the suitcase? Stuff. You bring your stuff, and it takes a while to unload your stuff from the suitcase. And what we see is that very, very good devotees still have stuff they still haven't unpacked after all these years. 30 years, they're still, and like, oh, I forgot I have stuff. Oh, I didn't realize, I thought I unpacked everything. I didn't realize I had stuff. So that kind of thing happens. And it's just a reality. It's not a criticism. I didn't, after I gave class last week, I was thinking, maybe that was an improper thing to say. Maybe people would take it wrong that I was criticizing senior devotees. And that wasn't at all the intention. The intention was to deal with the fact that as you advance in Krishna consciousness, there may be aspects of you that don't advance along as well as other aspects that you'll need to work on. Like even after all these years as a devotee, I'm having a hard time buttoning my shirt. I don't have buttoning shakti. Actually, the tailor made it quite small. Okay, now maybe I'll never get it off, now that we have it on. Okay, so you all know this to be true. You all know your own defects. Isn't it? You all know your own defects. So you know that as you advance in Krishna consciousness, some defects are very deeply conditioned. So it was just, we were talking about this in terms of emotional control because somebody was asking, do you see senior devotees still maybe not emotionally controlled in every area? And I said, yeah, it's a reality. And that was just a warning to you that don't think that all your conditioning is just going to fly away when you, let's say, start controlling your eating or you're starting to sleep less. But there are other aspects of you that may need attention. So that was the idea. Because sometimes the thought is, I don't have to give attention because I just do bhakti. And in a philosophical sense, it's true, but in a practical sense, if there's a pain in your body, you need to give it attention. So if there's a pain, emotional scar that's affecting your bhakti, you need to give it attention. And if you give it attention and you heal it or you purify it or transcend it, then it's going to help you in your Krishna consciousness. So if it helps you in your Krishna consciousness, that's good. Now, obviously you don't want to apply tamasic methods or methods which could be psychologically damaging perhaps, or against our principles. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about more sattvic principles or under principles that are, maybe we could say, scientifically proven to work, that help people who have certain issues that you're facing. Now, to give another example, and this is very simple. It's not always even about issues, or it's not always about difficult emotional traumas. Sometimes it's just about knowing what is proper behavior and what is not proper behavior. Sometimes it's about knowing If I do this, I'll get this result. If I do this, I'll get that result. And I didn't know it. And so my relationships are having difficulty because I didn't know certain things. So sometimes it's just a matter of learning. And maybe you grew up as a devotee making certain mistakes, but you didn't know how to act any other way. And you learn. Now you learn. Like one of our godbrothers, Bir Krishna Maharaj, he teaches a course called Nonviolent Communication. But that's something he learned. But he found it to be very Krishna conscious, but put in a specific context to help in devotee relationships. And so the person he learned it from had studied this specific topic for many, many, many years. So he found it helpful and found it aligned with Krishna consciousness. So having studied that, having learned from that, he could share that with the devotees, and the devotees found that learning a few things that they didn't know about communication, a few things they didn't know about themselves because maybe they were shut down, that it helps them. So I think it's a simple thing, but sometimes people have so many arguments against it. So that was my point of the last class, that sometimes even you could be evolving in Krishna consciousness, but you still may have issues that have not been healed, very traumatic issues or a certain nature because of situations and conditioning in your life or previous lives that may need to be addressed. And so there's no guarantee that just by being Krishna conscious, everything else will be perfect. You'll be the ideal husband or wife or the ideal temple president or the ideal anything. You may have to learn these things. Does that make sense? Just like if you become Krishna conscious and you don't know how to sing, you still may not know how to sing. Or you don't know how to cook, you still may not know how to cook. And you don't know how to paint, you still may not know how to paint. But at least you'll do it with bhakti, that's for sure. So, that was my introduction. And now we can chant a little bit, Jai Radha Madhava, and then we'll begin, and then all the latecomers, you still have time to come. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Balabha Girivaradhari, Gopi Jana Balabha Girivaradhari, Shwaranandana Brajajana Ranjana, Shwaranandana Brajajana Ranjana, Jamuna Tira Vanachari, Jamuna Tira Vanachari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Hold on, don't go anywhere. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Shwaranandana Brajajana Ranjana, Shwaranandana Brajajana Ranjana, Shwaranandana Brajajana Ranjana, Shamunatira Vanachari, Yamunatira Vanachari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. One more time, everyone. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Sisi Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Welcome, Australia. 7:15 in the morning in Australia. Hare Krishna. So, today we're talking about blame, and I will read what we have written as the fourth problem. And if you scroll to Sundari Radha's name, you will see under her name. So if you go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. If you go 14 from the bottom, I don't know how many from the top. It's about the same from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. Somewhere, yeah. It's about 14 from the top, 14 from the bottom. Something like that. How many people we have? 29. It's like right in the middle. Okay, so let's read this. The fourth quality of a highly ineffective person is, drum roll please. A little louder please. You blame another person or situation for your failure. Have you ever done that before? Not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. And everybody's looking at you laughing like, what planet do you live on, Prabhuji? You didn't do anything wrong? Hare Krishna. And you know how we say Hare Krishna sometimes? We say, Hare Krishna. You know what Hare Krishna means? That means you're nuts. That's what it means. Have you ever said Hare Krishna? Or that means I don't like you. I don't like what you said. Something I don't like. Hare Krishna. I don't like it. Or you walk by somewhere and there's a dead skunk and you go, Hare Krishna. Yeah, Hare Krishna sometimes means I don't like it. Or sometimes it means, are you crazy? Are you kidding? I didn't do it. Hare Krishna. Are you kidding me? Okay, so we were talking this morning. We were thinking, instead of calling we do Srimad Bhagavatam class every day. But instead of calling it Srimad Bhagavatam class, we were thinking of rebranding it, and we're going to call the class, and we have to make a logo for it, Laughing Your Way Back to Godhead. So we're going to make fun of everything and everyone who's not Krishna conscious, and we're going to laugh our way back to Godhead, and we're going to be laughing at ourselves, thinking, ha, 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 I'm so stupid. I do that too. Ha, ha, that's me. So we'll laugh our way back to Godhead. I'm actually seriously thinking of changing the name and making a logo. I don't know what you think of that idea, but every morning the classes are quite funny. And I always tell the devotees, it's purifying to make fun of things that aren't Krishna conscious. It's purifying to show the stupidity of things. And the reason it's purifying because if we don't laugh at the stupidity, we might get entangled in the stupidity. If we don't laugh at the stupidity, we might do the stupid thing ourselves. So I'm thinking about this. Laugh your way back to Godhead. That was yeah. But then if we do that, I have to be very funny on every show. Okay. So far, so good. I've been doing good. Okay. One of the reasons, for many years I went out on the street and distributed books and collected donations. And one of the reasons I like to do that is I like to act. And so I put on this very extroverted persona and I would joke with people. And I engaged that nature. I'll tell you one story. It's quite funny. In the shopping malls, you have department stores. And we would distribute the books and collect donations in shopping malls. The problem is they have security that goes up and down. And occasionally a store owner or a store employee would see us distributing books because we'd like be in one place for a while. And they would call the security. And they'd say, they would tell the security there's someone soliciting in front of our store, and then they'd come looking for us. And sometimes they'd catch us, or sometimes we would leave that spot and they couldn't find us. But we wanted to distribute books in the malls because that's where everybody was. And the weather was controlled. It was just a very great place to distribute, and people are shopping, people can afford to buy something. And then we realized that after like an hour or two, you get spotted. It's kind of obvious. You're selling something and you're not supposed, technically you're not supposed to, although there are legal issues that could be contested. So what I decided to do was go in the department stores, because the security does not go in the department store. And I wouldn't stay in the department store very long, because obviously you're quite visible, but if you go in a different department and kind of go out and go in the next one, the security will never see you. And that way we could benefit people by engaging them in Krishna, more people by engaging them in Krishna consciousness than we could engage if we were just out in front of a grocery store or something, where we were often allowed by the grocery store to do it, but not as big of a concentration of people. And weather-wise could be a problem. So one time I approached a lady and I was explaining everything. And she said, "Does this store allow you to do this inside?" She couldn't believe that the store would allow this. And you know what I said? I said, "Of course not. You think they'd allow me to do this inside? No way, they'd never allow it." And she was like, "I can't believe this guy." She just started laughing and gave a donation. So I liked being out there because I could utilize that side of me, which was to joke and act and Hare Krishna. So that's just a little history on my joke telling. But I did find out, I thought I was funny, but the first japa retreat I went to with Satchidananda Swami, I found out he was even funnier than I was. And I didn't know that. I thought he's a very German, they are not funny. They're very serious, not funny people. Whatever you do it well, okay? You must be German. And he's like, in his German way, he would catch us from, the back door with his jokes. It was really, really interesting. So you can laugh your way back to Godhead. Hridayananda Maharaj is like expert at making fun of the material world, which is what Prabhupada does in a more philosophical way, but sometimes Prabhupada is also funny. So it's okay to laugh, and sometimes it's actually necessary and very purifying. And also, the Shastra says, if you can make devotees laugh, then you make advancement. So if you can go out after class and make a devotee laugh, you're going to go up. If you make a devotee cry, you're going to go down, I think. Shastra doesn't say that, but we could guess. If you make them laugh, you go up. If you make them cry, you're probably going down. Okay. So, under you blame another person or situation for your failure, I have written, blaming ensures that you can't improve because you put your power to improve into another person's hands. So what does this mean? Well, let's say you did something wrong. Well, not let's say you did something wrong. Think of a time when you did something wrong. I know it's happened to all of us. There must be one time you did something wrong. But you wouldn't admit it. And in fact, you said, it's not my fault, it's his fault. So what's the problem here? Well, if it is your fault, and you say it's his fault, then the situation cannot be solved until he corrects himself, right? Because it's his fault. And by saying it's his fault, you're saying there's nothing I can do, and there's nothing I need to do, because it's not my fault. So I can't make the situation better. Only he, when he changes, or he apologizes, or he makes up, or he admits his mistake, or he says, I'm sorry, can this situation be rectified? So the obvious problem there is, what if he doesn't say, I'm sorry? What if he doesn't make up? What if he doesn't do any of those things? Then you have a problem that can't be solved, because according to you, it wasn't your fault, it was his fault, and it can only be solved if he apologizes. So what have you just done? You've completely, I can't pronounce this word. What's that word? I don't even want to try to pronounce it because you'll all start laughing. I want to say obfuscated, but that's not obfuscated. We had this word in another class, and someone told me the word that I was looking for. Does anybody know the word I'm looking for? When you avoid something, you avoid recognizing around office, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I didn't pay attention in school. That was my problem. Somehow or other, I got into a good university. I don't know how I did it. I can't even pronounce this word. I can't even remember it. But anyway, if you deny your responsibility in an affair and you think it's someone else's responsibility, then the only way the situation can be resolved is if that person resolves it. So here I said, blaming ensures you can't improve because you put your power to improve into another person's hand. It's not my fault. I don't have to do anything. It's his fault. He has to do something. Okay. But what if he doesn't do anything? Problem doesn't get resolved. Or even a more interesting thing, what if he doesn't admit it's his fault? What if he doesn't know it's his fault? What if he doesn't know he did anything wrong? He's not going to do anything. So you're going to spend the rest of your life with a problem, waiting for this person to solve, to apologize, whatever he has to do, and he doesn't even know what the problem is. So it's time for a joke. I don't know if you'll think it's funny, but it's funny in a philosophical sense. So sometimes when people have a problem, they say, "What? You know, you're doing this, you're behaving this way," and they say, "Yeah, it's my mother's fault. That's, you know, this is how she raised me." And so the joke is, so if your mother goes into therapy and I fix her, then that means automatically you get fixed. She gets fixed, you get fixed. She's got a problem, you have a problem. So that's where blame breaks down. You can't fix a problem because you're depending on another person to fix a problem. And this is just a joke, because when she gets fixed, it doesn't fix you, right? So now, blame, how can we look at blame in Krishna consciousness? We understand standard blame as, just blame somebody. Why didn't this work out? Well, I told him to do it and he forgot. Okay, but it was your responsibility to get it done. And the fact that you weren't on top of him, or you didn't replace him, or you weren't smart enough to know that this person is not responsible, he's probably not going to do it, that's your fault. Sometimes Prabhupada would say, why didn't this get done? And the president would say, I told him to do it. And Prabhupada said, your responsibility to make sure it gets done, not just to tell him. So Prabhupada was showing him, the buck stops with you. Just because you tell someone to do it, you're not off the hook. You have to make sure they do it. So that was one aspect of responsibility that Prabhupada talked about. But blaming is interested in Krishna consciousness now, because I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been in Maya? Okay, we know the answer. When you were in Maya, were you blaming anyone or anything? And if so, what? Sometimes you even blame yourself. Yeah, I'm just lazy. Okay, so that's an excuse. Okay. Why are you in Maya? Well, so-and-so got upset with me, or I wasn't feeling well, or I got up late, or I didn't chant good rounds, or whatever. Now, if you stand back and analyze that, all those excuses are really what we call lame. Lame excuse means it's a really bad excuse. You could do better. Of course, there's generally not good excuses, but those are what we call lame excuses. Like, they're on the bottom of the barrel of excuses, really bad ones. And so if you think about any challenge you have in Krishna consciousness and you ask yourself, why do I have that challenge? If your answer is anything other than because I'm weak, I'm foolish, I'm ignorant, I don't try hard, you try to give some other answer, it's to justify your mistakes, to justify your weakness. That is the stupidest thing you could do, and I'll explain why. Why would you ever want to justify why you're in Maya? Wouldn't you want to figure out how to get out of Maya rather than justify why you're in it? Why would you want to justify failure? Prabhu, why did you fail at that? Well, it's because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Why would you want to justify it rather than say, let's sit down and figure out how to make this work? Why would you want to excuse yourself and point out the reasons that this failed that had nothing to do with you? If you stand back with a sober head, like dunk your head in some cold water so you get sober, and think about it, it makes absolutely no sense. But we do it all the time, don't we? Why would you ever want to come up with a rational excuse for failing? It doesn't make no sense. That's not proper English. Doesn't make any sense. Don't make no sense, man. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to do that? Well, I think as devotees, we can understand or we can admit there's some false ego involved in making excuses. False ego means I want to look good. If I take responsibility, I look bad. If I can blame you, it's your fault, I'm looking good. Prabhupada didn't think like that. Prabhupada thought in terms of what is the best for Krishna's service. And if the best thing for Krishna's service is that I take responsibility for something that went wrong, then I should do that. If that's what has to be done, I should do it. It's not about how I look or I don't look. So I think that's one important thing. But a funny thing is that in the devotional community, if you're trying to shift the blame to someone else so you look good, doing that makes you look worse than if you would take the blame. Because if you take the blame, everyone will think, wow, he's really humble. Dandavats to you, Prabhu. You were humble enough to admit your mistake. But if everyone knows you made the mistake and you're trying to put the blame on someone else, everyone's going to look at you and say, Hare Krishna. Something like that. You're going to say, come on, come on. You'll just disturb everyone. So rather than looking good, you'll look worse. And if you take the humble position, rather than looking worse, you'll look better. Isn't that interesting? Did you get what I said? Does that register? If you take the humble position, admit your mistake, people will look at you and say, wow, I like you. You're real. You got integrity, and you got strength. You could admit your mistake. You'll actually look better by not trying to cover up your mistake, and you'll look worse by trying to shift the blame and make yourself innocent, free from fault. Isn't that interesting? Yes? Is that interesting? Or is that interesting? You're right. It's interesting. Okay. So, it says we are live. Are you still out there, everyone? Are you breathing? Show me a sign that you're still there. Show me an emoticon that says, I'm still breathing. Sometimes you don't know on Facebook where your audience goes because you don't see them. Okay, so now we're going to take a question from Krishna Karshini. I'm wondering, are you all there? I'm wondering how someone might be advanced and react in an immature way. Maybe I am wrong, but for me, a test how someone is advanced is how that person is dealing with others in general. Usually, emotionally immature people have issues with others. Our relationship with Krishna is based on relationship with devotees. So how someone might be advanced and have issues with others? How to understand? Very good question. I think we addressed that in the beginning, didn't we? We addressed that in the beginning. So, because only up until a very elevated state of Krishna consciousness will you be completely purified of your conditioning. And until then, your conditioning will have some effect on you. According to how strong you are, how advanced you are, how much you let that conditioning affect you. So, because we're impure in the process of becoming pure, so how much do we give in to the impurity? So some devotees will give in less to the impurity, some will give in more. And some, this is just my observation, don't even see the impurity. They don't know that their action is considered unethical, impolite, unconscious, unconscionable. It could be the culture that they're raised in. It could be normal in that culture. That's also there. That's just how they deal with people in their culture. So sometimes you may be analyzing it, and from your perspective, it's wrong, but from their perspective, it's normal. So you have to consider that also. The cultural perspectives could be different. So, can I read you something? We read this on Thursday, but it relates to what we're talking about. I wanted to read something Prabhupada said. So just give me a second to find this. We should never think our so-called advancement is being conditioned by or dependent upon some set of material circumstances, such as marriage, vanaprast, or this or that. Mature understanding of Krishna consciousness means that whatever condition of life I am in at the present, that is Krishna's special mercy upon me. Therefore, let me take advantage in the best possible way to spread this Krishna consciousness movement. I conduct my spiritual master's mission. And elsewhere in this letter, Prabhupada said this mentality of allowing the situation to affect one and then blaming the situation is the mentality of a neophyte. So, this devotee was actually blaming his wife and the whole family situation, the whole family culture, for his lack of Krishna consciousness. And he was not only blaming her, but he was writing to Prabhupada to tell Prabhupada how difficult it was to be Krishna conscious being married, having a young son and a wife, and how he needed to get out of that situation in order to become advanced. And Prabhupada, later in this letter, Prabhupada's saying here, this is the context. If you think the condition that you're in, you're dependent on that condition to be Krishna conscious, that's an immature understanding. So what was he doing? He was blaming the situation. Have you ever blamed a situation? Well, I could be Krishna conscious, but... So you're blaming something. I could be Krishna conscious, but my husband, he eats too much. I could be Krishna conscious, but my wife, she sleeps too much. I could be Krishna conscious, but my kids watch too much video games. Too many video games. I could be Krishna conscious, but... So here's an important lesson for everyone. I could be, but... If only it were like this, then I could be. If just I had blank, then I could be. These are all traps. And this is what this devotee is saying. If I could only be a sannyasi, then I could be Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada's saying, no, that's how immature devotees think. They think circumstances prevent or make my Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada's saying, that's an immature understanding. If only I could then. If I just had then. If only this would happen then. I could do this, but. I used to joke with devotees. I call them but Prabhus or but Devis, because they'd make so many excuses. So your name is but Devi. It's always like, Gurudev, I could do this, but. All right, your new name is but Devi. You know, because the problem is after the but, the excuse comes. After the if only, then the excuse comes. If only it were like this, but it's not like that. So that's a trap, and we have to be aware of that trap. So, I would like to throw a little thought in your mind. Nothing's impossible with Krishna's mercy. You agree? Raise your hand if you agree. I think we got stuck here. I can't see your raising your hands or anything. But, and that could be the last question I see. Sometimes we get on frozen mode. I'm also having trouble with my internet. I could go online and check my Facebook and see. Probably we have more comments than I see. Had to do this last time. Log into Facebook. And then I could see you all there. Hold on. But it slows the internet down a bit. Here we go. Give me a moment. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. I have to go somewhere else. Maybe my home page? No. I am not seeing myself. Hold on. Why don't I see myself? Now the chat doesn't work, so you can't tell me why I don't see myself. Okay, let's try to go to the other page. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to expand it. Then I should see the chat, in theory. Okay. Turn off. See what I see. Yeah, now I see. There's more. Yeah, now I see your comments. I lost your comments. Okay. So I'm going up. Wow, so many comments I missed. Okay, hold on, everyone. Okay. Now we're going to read the next comment. Obfuscated. Yeah, that's the word. Obfuscate. That's a tongue twister. Obfuscate. I'm not going to use that word. I can't even pronounce it. Obfuscated. That's a strange word. I wonder what the origin of that is. Sundari Radha says, I blame my ex-husband for being a weak father. When I stopped blaming him and changed how I treated him, he became a better father. Wow. Wasted a lot of time and energy blaming. Yeah. You know what they say about blame? That you're... sometimes we use blame as a means to just pacify hurt in ourselves. Because if I have to admit I'm weak, it hurts. So if I can find someone to blame, it feels better, so I don't have to deal with it. Amrita Radhika says, blame, excuses, and denial are the three main traits of victim mentality. Learning how to overcome being a victim can cure these three traits. Yeah. You want to hear something beautiful little mantra for you? Oh, this was... Excuses are arguments for your failure. Excuses are arguments for your failure. And that's why when people have excuses, I always say, why would you want an excuse? Wouldn't you want a solution rather than an excuse? Oh, I can't do that. There's too much this and too much that. But wouldn't you want a solution rather than, do you want to spend the rest of your life telling me why you can't achieve your goals? Or do you want to come up with solutions? So it's an argument for your failure. But there's another interesting thing. The word excuse, it means without cause. So to make an excuse is to say the problem I'm having is without cause. Isn't that interesting? Excusa, without cause. Now, you want to do a little exercise? If you're in a situation and you're making an excuse, backtrack, and then just remember all the actions you did that brought you to the present position. And then imagine you didn't do one of those actions or two of those actions. And then you would see your present position would be different. So, excuses. Without cause? No, definitely causes. You delineate, think about any situation that you're trying to obfuscate. You're trying to deny that you had anything to deal with. Think about it. Trace yourself backwards. Look at what you did. And just ask yourself the question, if I would have done this differently or that differently, would there have been a different result? The answer is yes. It's so simple that nobody gets it. And it's so simple nobody does it. And it's so simple nobody wants to admit that they were the cause of the results. But you can easily see you were the cause just by backtracking and imagining if this didn't happen, right? If I didn't do this, that wouldn't have happened. This result wouldn't have happened. It would have been totally different. So yes. So we blame. One reason we blame is to try to pacify ourselves, the hurt. Another reason we blame is to try to express a need, but it's an immature way to express it. And also, blame is very hurtful to the person you're blaming, especially if they didn't do anything wrong. And if you meditate on this idea, devotee's compassionate. Compassion is the opposite of hurting. And when we become angry or critical or we blame someone, we hurt them. Right? And that kind of hurt is diametrically opposed to the nature of a Vaishnava. Isn't it? It's opposed to the nature of a Vaishnava. Yes? Yes or yes? So when you're blaming someone, instead of taking responsibility, especially if it's not really their fault or not entirely, you're hurting them. And so you're acting in diametric opposition to compassion. And compassion is supposed to be fundamental nature of a devotee. If you're criticizing someone, you're hurting them. You're causing pain. The nature of a devotee is compassionate. He relieves pain. He doesn't give pain. What was the other one you said? Blame, excuses, denial. Yeah. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. Beautiful story in the Bhagavatam. 4 Kumars are on their way to Vaikuntha. 7 gates, 7 or 8 gates. 7 gates, I think. 7 gates to Vaikuntha. And each gate represents an attribute of bhakti. And I'm sorry I don't remember the attributes. But the last gate, I think, is bhakti itself, love, devotion, surrender. So the 4 Kumars, these young little boys, decided to remain brahmachari, and by their mystic power, they remain 5-year-old boys. So easy not to get married. If you don't want to get married, just do yoga and keep yourself as a 5-year-old boy. No girl will want to marry you. Your life will be easy. You won't have to deal with any proposals. So that was their idea. If we just stay 5, then no problem. So they're on their way to Vaikuntha. getting through the gates of Vaikuntha to see Vishnu. And then they got to the last gate, Jai and Vijay. What are you doing here? You don't belong here. You're just little boys. Get out of here. How'd you get here? How'd you sneak? They were so upset. They thought like they snuck in or something. And the four Kumaras, they're really shocked because they were let in the previous 6 gates. So they were thinking like, who are you to stop us? We just went through 6 gates. Like, you must be in Maya. No, I don't think they were thinking like that. How could you be in Maya? There's something wrong. You must be in ignorance. Like, who do you think you are to stop us? You're becoming proud. So right in Vaikuntha was this brawl. And so they were fighting, and they were in denial. It's not my fault. It's your fault. No, it's not my fault. It's your fault. You don't, and the four Kumaras said, you don't belong here. You're not qualified to be guards. You don't know who to let in and who not to. And Jai and Vijay said, you don't belong here. You're not qualified to go in here. You don't know what you're talking about. Denial. What do they say? Denial is not just a river in Egypt. And they're fighting. You're nonsense. You're nonsense. You're nonsense. You're nonsense. You don't belong here. You don't belong here. You don't belong here. And then, it's like the other week, Krishna Karshan had kind of got in a fight with a policeman, and I joked with her, I said, and she called him an idiot. And I joked with her and I said, don't ever call anyone an idiot who has a gun. Not a good idea. Anyway, everything ended up good, and they fell in love with her, and it was all fine. But don't get an argument with like sadhus who have mystic power. Not a good idea, because if they curse you, then it's not good. So that's what happened. They cursed them. So they both were denying their position, and then Vishnu came out. Vishnu said, I heard this fighting. I want to apologize for my guards because they represent me, so ultimately it's my fault. And that softened the heart of the four Kumaras. Then the four Kumaras said, no, we're sorry. And then Jai and Vijay, that softened their heart, and they said, no, we're sorry. We shouldn't have said what we said. No, we shouldn't have. No, it's really my fault. No, not your fault. We provoked it. It's really our fault. No. I should have let you, and I should have known who you are. There was a major apology. Such a nice example, right? That you, even though you're a devotee, you might sometimes put the blame on someone, but still, in the end, you apologize. So, okay. Hare Krishna. So Katie's going to tell us something. What if one person wants to make amendments to an argument with another person, but the other person will just be making the situation more difficult every day, even after the intervention of a service authority? What to do? Well, you know the saying, Katie, choose your battles wisely. I'm having an out-of-body experience here because I'm seeing myself in real time, and I'm seeing myself here 10 seconds before. It's very strange. My left and right brain are getting confused here. Yeah. Yeah. So my advice to you, Katie, is choose your battles wisely. Some things are not repairable. Sometimes the car gets too old to repair it, just let it go. And sometimes you have to be detached, that the relationship may never work out the way you want it. And so that's being responsible also, by recognizing it's a waste of energy to try to make something better. The car's too old. Don't put more money into it. So that may happen sometimes. Is that okay? Krishna Karshani says, admitting faults might be painful. Easier to blame others than we feel relief. Yeah. Blaming others is to get relief from taking responsibility, because it's painful to admit faults. That's definitely true. False ego. Oh my God. The goal of the false ego is to be number one. But you know what's so interesting? You see how easily the pure devotees admit their faults, because they don't have that false ego. So that's how you gauge your advancement. If you find it difficult, someone points out a fault and you feel the need to defend yourself, it's a very bad sign. I mean, sometimes in a practical situation, you may have to defend yourself because you may be blamed for something and say, I can't fix it because I didn't make that mistake. So you have to explain yourself. But in the ordinary course, it's not the right thing to do. A Vaishnava doesn't do that. And so sometimes you will find that sometimes you have to, sometimes you may have to say you're sorry and you didn't even do anything wrong. That's also quality of a Vaishnava. If it will make peace with the situation, then the Vaishnava may say, I'm sorry for something he didn't even do wrong. Now, if you're very attached to justice, that will be very hard for you. Because you'll want to see the person who's done something wrong, you want to see them suffer or be punished. But an actual Vaishnava, he can say, I'm sorry, even when he didn't do something wrong. If it will help his devotional service or help another person's devotional service, he can do that. That's interesting, isn't it? Okay. Easier to blame others, but then we should think, but it's not what it means to be a Vaishnava. Vaishnava means you're willing to admit your own mistakes. Okay. Amrita Radhika says, can you also please explain about the role of self-esteem in being able to take responsibility rather than blaming? Well, I think it's just what we were saying. Because if you have low self-esteem, it's really hard to admit you've done something wrong, because you already think, I'm so bad, I'm so bad, so bad. So feeling you're so bad, it's really hard to just, there's a situation, you've done something bad, you have to admit it, it's really hard. If you have healthy self-esteem, it's not a problem. And the reason, this is how psychologists explain it, and it's helpful for our information. I completely forgot what I was going to say. I'm tired. You can tell, right? Hare Krishna. I could talk a little bit about it, but I totally forgot what I was going to say, what the psychologists say. I have to think now. It's a sign of being tired, you can't remember. Let me read your question again. Please explain the role of self-esteem in being able to take responsibility rather than blaming. Well, part of it is people who have low self-esteem often have been blamed for so many things their entire life. So they're very sensitive. Oh yeah, and I remember what I was going to say. I couldn't be that tired, I remember. That you have two emotions that are similar but different. One is guilt and one is shame. So, at least in the secular world, they say, guilt means I feel bad for what I did. Shame means I feel bad about myself for what I did. So in guilt, I feel guilty that I did it, but I don't feel degraded as a person. But in shame, I feel degraded as a person. I'm such a bad person, I did this. Rather than, I did something bad. But it doesn't mean I am bad, it just means I did something bad. I feel guilty, I shouldn't have done that. But I'm not a bad person. I don't normally do that. I didn't really mean it. Something overcame me. Shame is, I did something bad because I'm such a bad person. So that's when it becomes degrading. You demean yourself. So low self-esteem tends to be more on the shame side. And guilt can be quite healthy. The healthy individuals have guilt. They just recognize what they did is wrong. So if you recognize what you did is wrong, that's good. But if you demean yourself for doing it, that can weaken you and disempower you. And so if you have low self-esteem, you'll tend to do that. So to protect yourself, you'll often blame others so you don't have to bear the shame that you would experience if you admitted what you did. That's the problem. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, or you want me to say more, just let me know. Giridhar Kanopuram Hare Krishna. How to overcome self-blame and self-pity. It's probably going to require some reprogramming of your beliefs about yourself. Because at the heart of self-blame is some belief about I'm not good enough or something like that. And this is what we're talking about with Krishna Karshani. You bring in this baggage, bring in this baggage into this life. There's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, I'm not lovable, etc. So it's probably something you brought in or you got in this life as a samskara, as a deeply rooted conditioning. And so you have to replace that with a different conditioning. A set of beliefs that would counteract that. But right now, Giridhar, what you can do, stop blaming yourself. Stop pitying yourself. And ask yourself why you want to do that. You're trying to, what's the point? What are you trying to prove by it? You're trying to get attention, trying to get sympathy. If so, why do you need other people's sympathy? Now, from the spiritual perspective, if you want to advance in Krishna consciousness, you're not going to do well blaming yourself for everything. Now, there's another interesting reality. Sometimes we blame ourselves kind of as a shielding. Why, I'm so bad at this. So now you don't want anyone to expect you to be responsible in certain areas. So you just say, yeah, I'm so bad at this. So it's kind of like you're making an excuse for yourself. Yeah, I'm so bad at this. I can't do anything right. So once you let everybody know that you can't do anything right, now you don't have to do anything right because you're off the hook. Right? Yeah, Prabhu, you're right. I'm so bad. I cannot do anything right. And now, I don't have to do anything right. Did you know that? Did you know that? Are you aware of that? That some devotees do that, and they're not even conscious that they're doing it, but they're telling others how bad they are so they don't have to be responsible. And when they don't live up to standards, they say, I told you how bad I was. You didn't believe me, but now you see. So then it becomes a kind of excuse. So one way to overcome self-pity and what did you say, self-blame, is to see how harmful it is. The other thing I would say to anyone who blames themselves, I would say, you're actually no different from the people who don't blame themselves. You're not any worse. And maybe in some cases you're better than the people who blame themselves. Don't blame themselves. So you're blaming yourself, and you may be even better than the person who doesn't blame themselves. So it's not, blaming yourself is not objective. It's very subjective. And people who are very, very capable, very intelligent, very qualified, very successful, will also blame themselves unjustifiably. But that's their conditioning. That's what they've picked up in this life or brought into this life. And so that's what they do. And there's no justifiable, objective reason to do that. It's just their perception. So I think, Giridhar, you should look into that reality. And this is a very, very important point. So let's talk about it a little bit. I can share my experience. In my experience as a teacher and someone who's dealing and helping people deal with problems, my experience is that none of us are unique, that we all have the same problems to one degree or another. And nobody should think that their problems are unique. And once you understand your problems are not unique, it helps you tremendously. Because otherwise you think, I pity myself or I blame myself because I'm worse than others. That's not true. I'm worse. No, if you really knew me, if you really saw what was in my heart, if you really saw what was in my mind, you would know that I'm worse than others. But the problem is everybody's saying that, and everybody's thinking that. And the reality is we're all the same. We all have the same problems. More or less to one degree or another, more or less the same degree. And so those who are advancing spiritually are the ones who are able to tolerate and work through those problems and not give in to those problems. And the ones who are not advancing, it seems like they're weaker, but they're just giving into the problems, where the ones who are advancing are not giving into the problems. Not that the ones who are advancing don't have the problems. And in some cases, they may have the problems more intensely than someone else. So this is very, very important. I've seen this over and over and over again. In fact, when people have told me their problems, and I tell them, everybody has these problems, you should see the look on their face. They're totally shocked. They can't believe, because they thought their problems were unique to them. It's never like that. It seems like that externally because you look at people and it looks like everybody's doing fine. But when you sit down and talk to people and they open up, it all comes out. And it all comes out more or less the same, different varieties, but more or less the same for everybody. So when you see a strong devotee, don't ever think he was born that way or she was born that way. Think that she worked. She tolerated her own mind and senses. She tolerated the pushings and pullings of this world. She tolerated her own self-doubt. She tolerated that tendency to blame herself. She tolerated all these things. Not that they weren't there. She tolerated them. She acted in spite of them. She didn't allow these things to stop her. That's how to think. And then you'll be okay. But if you think your problems are unique to you, you think your problems are more severe than other people's problems, then you're going to think you're a hopeless case or you're very unfortunate, when in fact you're just normal. This one of my godbrothers was giving class. There's a lot of brahmacharis. This was in the 90s, and young brahmacharis, and young brahmacharis. They don't really understand grihastha life, like why anybody would get married. Because they're so happy. This is going out on book distribution, and they come home, take a little prasadam, take a shower, go to arti, read a little bit, go to sleep, go to morning program, go out on book distribution, go out preaching, do service. Their life, they're living the life. They're living it up. And so in that state, sometimes they just don't understand why anyone would get married. So I was there at that time in LA, the late 90s, and lots of brahmacharis there, and one of our godbrothers was giving class. And they said, Maharaj, why would anyone ever want to get married? He was totally confused. He couldn't figure it out. Like, brahmachari life is it. It's heaven. No entanglement. Life is so simple. Why in God's name would anyone be stupid enough to ever want to get married? That was what was coming out of his head. And my godbrother said, because it's natural. Or he said, because it's normal. So I've seen devotees feeling guilty and lamenting because they want to get married. And that makes me sad, so sad. That it's just so normal and they're feeling guilty about it. So that's sad. So my point was that having a physical body and a subtle body, mind, intelligence, ego, it's normal that you're going to feel certain things. Like, it's a funny story. Somebody said, Srila Prabhupada, it's so hard to control my tongue. Prabhupada said, yes, I know. I also have a tongue. And one of the funniest stories, you probably heard this, but we'll tell it again because it's a classic. It's a proper classic. And they were talking about illicit sex, sexual attraction, attachment, and how sex is the center of material life, etc. One devotee, Srila Prabhupada, I don't have any sex desire. Go see a doctor. So, to think you have no sex desire and you have a body, it's kind of like saying, I never get hungry. I never get tired. I never get thirsty. It's natural. It's a natural part of the body. We all have it. But what is going to make the difference between one who's advancing and isn't is the one who's going to be able to, in spite of that, the self-pity and beating yourself up and all the crazy stuff you do and all the desires, you're going to be able to tolerate it, you're going to be able to work through it. You're going to be able to keep going and eventually tolerate more and more and stop beating yourself up. Stop blaming yourself. You're going to work through it. So, but my point to you, Giridhar, is you're not worse than anybody else. The only thing that may make you worse is that you're blaming yourself. That's all. But other than that, we're all pretty fallen. That's for sure. Okay. Galilea, Hare Krishna. What can be done to relieve guilt after not accepting our bad behavior and actions? After we internally accepted that we did wrong. Correct yourself. It's the best. Correcting yourself is the best medicine. There's no better medicine than self-correction, because in that self-correction, you'll feel relieved of the responsibility for having done something wrong. It's like if you ask me, what should I do if I'm sick? Then obviously I would say, get better. Do something to get better. So it's the same answer. What should I do if I've done something wrong? Do something to get better. That's what you should do. But if you sit there and don't do anything, or you sit there and you think this is really bad, you'll become very depressed. So what I generally suggest when you make a mistake is kind of analyze. How did I do it? How did I get into it? What did I do wrong? And how can I improve it? And in that process, you will feel renewed and restored. And then you'll be happy you felt guilty, because it was by feeling guilty that you rectified yourself. That emotion of guilt is there so you can rectify yourself, so you can know what you've done wrong. I'm looking at myself here and looking at myself there 10 seconds ago. This is really like almost as good as LSD or something, Hare Krishna. Of course, if you don't like yourself, then you've got two of yourself looking at you. It'd probably be a nightmare. But, yeah. Galilea, whenever someone did something wrong, I'm looking at her picture there, but she's over here. Yeah. Whenever someone did something wrong, Prabhupada would say, so what are you going to do now? So that's the question. That's my question to you. Now that you did something wrong, the question to ask yourself, and all of us when we do something wrong, is what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Should we make a song? What are you gonna do now that you did something wrong? What are you gonna do now? What are you gonna do now? That's the song you have to sing when you do something wrong. What am I going to do now? Other than nothing and other than lamenting, what am I going to do? Because if you do nothing and you just lament, then that wrong action, you're not going to learn anything from it. It's not going to motivate you to be better. What do I have to do so I don't make this mistake again? What can I learn from this so I don't make this mistake again? That's what I would think. That's how I do think. If ever I've made a mistake, that's my first thought. And believe it or not, I've made mistakes. A few. Once in a while. It does happen. Krishna consciousness says, I have to confess that I thought that if I would be more Krishna conscious in certain situation, I considered more conclusive for Krishna consciousness. Conclusive. I'm not sure what you mean. But when I finally ended up, it seems to be a better situation. I wasn't more Krishna conscious. You are right. This kind of thinking is a trap. Can you explain that? I forgot what I said, and I'm not sure. In certain situations, I considered more, conducive. Oh, okay. Yeah. I confess that I thought that if I would be more I would be more Krishna conscious. Not if. I would be more Krishna conscious in certain situations. I considered more conducive for Krishna consciousness, but I finally ended up that it seems to be a better situation. In a better situation, I wasn't more Krishna conscious. Yeah, that happens. Because ultimately it depends on you and how you respond. That's an important lesson we talked about the other day in a class. Prabhupada talked about this a lot. He always gave the example of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj was not in a good situation to be Krishna conscious. He always talked about it. Not in a good situation. But he was very Krishna conscious. And sometimes, what's interesting is sometimes the situation you think is not good for your Krishna consciousness actually is. Very good for your Krishna consciousness. That's another thing. Yes. You just don't realize that this situation can make you stronger. Because in this situation, which is so-called more difficult, you're going to have to be stronger to get through it. And sometimes in the situation which is so-called better, you become weaker because you don't try. Andrea Carolina Ramirez says, Hare Krishna. When we start in the process to learn about Krishna consciousness, we learn about karma. Therefore, in certain circumstances, we get confused with what's the cause of what's happening to us. Clearly, all actions have a reaction, but how can we drive away from the excuse of blaming it on karma, past karma? Well, the answer is very easy. You created your past karma. So even if you blame it on your karma, you're blaming yourself. Right? Yes? Isn't that funny? It's not my fault, Prabhu. It's just my karma. Okay, well, I have a question for you, Prabhu. Who created your karma? Prabhu, who created your karma? I'll give you a hint. You know that person you see in the mirror every morning when you're brushing your teeth? Yeah. That's the person who created your karma. But you've created it, and you're saying, it's created, it's in motion, it's already coming. Right, yeah. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to deal with it? That's the next question. So what I would say to you is, no matter what happens, don't give up Krishna consciousness. No matter what your karma is, just let it come as it comes. You know, one time there was some situation, and they asked Prabhupada, do you want to read the astrology? Prabhupada said, no, let whatever comes, come. It's, we'll take it like that. We'll deal with it. We'll be Krishna conscious no matter what happens. So that's the idea. Oh wait, but let's say you say, well, it's my karma, but someone else created my karma. Because it does happen. You get other people's karma also. But still, it's the same answer. But what are you going to do about it? That's like anything. I don't feel good today. What are you going to do? Not chant your rounds? I'm tired today. What are you going to do? Not chant your rounds? My toenails hurt. What are you going to do? Not chant your rounds? That's the idea. No matter what comes at you, the question you ask yourself is, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to roll over and pretend I'm dead, or am I going to deal with it? So, in that sense, it doesn't really matter if it's your karma or not your karma, or, COVID-19, whose karma is it? Now this Japanese physician or physicist or biologist or something came out and said, COVID-19 is a man-made virus. It didn't happen naturally. It's not acting like a natural virus. Natural viruses do not exist in various climates. COVID-19 exists in cold climate, exists in warm climate. He said it was not coming from an animal. It was actually man-made. Okay, everyone, what are you going to do about it? Let's say, for the sake of discussion, that's true. What are you going to do about it? It's like, what can you do about it? The same thing you're going to do about it if it wasn't man-made. Right? So that's the Krishna conscious way to deal with it. Okay. Pandit Srivas Das says, blame gives us pleasure in the mode of ignorance. While blaming someone, we place ourselves in the center instead of putting Krishna in the center. Yes. Really, what I think one of the things that's so important we take from this class is that blame inflicts pain on others. Blame inflicts pain. Causing pain to others. And it's really, it's really painful to live with someone or deal with someone who won't accept their responsibility for doing something wrong, because you can't resolve the problem because they won't admit it. It's very frustrating, isn't it? And it's such a pleasure to deal with people who will admit their fault in that, oh yeah, I did this wasn't good, this wasn't right. And it's such a pleasure, isn't it? You have that experience? It can be very frustrating to deal with people who blame and don't take responsibility. And it's such a great pleasure if someone has done something wrong, they just admit it. It's so easy to get along with them. Okay, we're coming down to the deadline. Deadline's probably not a good word. The finish line. Same core problem, different details. Yeah, we all have the same problems, they manifest differently. Galilee, you're welcome. I know so many devotees from so many places. Galilee, Kijai. My psychology teacher, this is Krishna Karshini, also known as Gosya. My psychology teacher said to me recently exactly what you told me. She said the only way to grow is to take full responsibility of our actions and feelings. Without it, we are not capable to change ourselves and our lives. She said it's a painful process, but it's necessary to finally feel real relief from pain. I mean, this is a very good way to look at it, is if there's a problem, and you could solve that problem by admitting the problem, then wouldn't it make sense, if it's actually a problem, to admit it? Or if it's possibly your fault or possibly a problem, wouldn't it make sense to admit it? Yes? Wouldn't it make sense to admit it? Because without admitting it, you can't work on it. You can't get over it. Sunshine. Now you know that's the West, right? Because the sun's... Wait a minute. I have to block the sun a bit. Okay. A little bit. That didn't work, did it? It's a strong sun. It's the best I can do. Is that okay? No, it's not. We always have this problem. I have to move things around. How's that? Better? Now you see all the messy things on my desk. I have to clean my office. I'm putting in new bookshelves, so I've got all my stuff around. You want to see a messy office? Look at all these books. Years ago, I read all these books. It's all like self-development. So I could give you all these classes. All these books. And all this mess. You want to come over and help me clean, anybody? I'll give you prasadam. This is one of my projects, is to clean my office. Put a new bookshelf. Hare Krishna. Okay, anything else? Does shame cause violent reactions? It could. Any unhealthy emotional state can trigger another unhealthy emotional state according to your conditioning, and then play out in crazy ways. So, and if you're a woman, which you are, not if you are a woman, not speaking of Galilee, since you are a woman, you have to be careful to notice that if you're dealing with men, they may have these like big emotional issues that could be dangerous for you, that could play out in violent ways. You have to be careful. Yeah, Katie's a cleaner. She would clean the office. I need to actually not clean it. I need an organizer. And but I'm good at organizing. We'll have fun. I just put on some lectures and I start moving books, bookshelves and bookcases, and yes. How can we react? How can we not react when some people keep blaming you for every little thing happening? You mean your mother-in-law? You're referring to your mother-in-law or your husband? It's got to be one or the other, right? It's either your mother-in-law, your boss, or your husband, or all three. So Sangita, I guess I can't get you to admit who it is, because that would be embarrassing. But it's one of those three, right? Because if it was someone else, if it's not a family member or someone you're close to, then obviously the solution is distance yourself. It's not healthy. All three? It's one of them. Could be all three. I hope it's not all three. Express it to them that it hurts you, it's not helping you. And that if they have problems with you, to be more kind in discussing it. And usually the other thing is you want to understand is that people who blame, usually, it's their own issue. It's like everything we're talking about is they don't want to admit their own weaknesses, or they're frustrated with their life. Husband, frustrated with their life. Is your husband a devotee? Is your husband a devotee? We're waiting for the answer. Yes or no? Well, whatever the answer is, you should ask your husband to listen to my talks on Grihastha life. No. Anyway, it's okay. Your husband's frustrated, so when he's blaming you, ask him, what's upsetting you? What are you frustrated about? Because I know you're blaming me is an indication of something deeper, and let's talk, and how can I help you, and like that. So you understand that. That's what's going on. Now I'm getting, this is so interesting, now I'm getting all I don't need to see it on my computer. Now we're getting it, yeah. Somehow or other, if someone's blaming, you have to be able to talk to them about what's going on. Why do we blame those dear to us? Because we're stupid. Familiarity breeds contempt. And because ultimately, if we're blaming, then we have to look at ourselves and say, okay, what's wrong with me? I'm blaming. If someone else is blaming, we have to be a little more compassionate and saying, okay, what are they going through? What frustrations are they going through that they have to take it out on me? He is a nice man and vegetarian, no smoking, caring to his dad and my son. Yeah. So then talk to him about it. Read up a little more about blaming, the psychology of it, and what's going on. And then ask him, talk about it. This is really hurting me, and I think there must be something frustrating you in your life, and what is it that's frustrating you that you need to take this out on me, and it's harming our relationship. Just for the records, Sangita, that marriages where blame is high, they don't work. They end. And some of them end with the couple staying together, but the marriage is basically over. There's a lot of marriages in India that have ended, they just never got divorced. They still live in the same house, but basically the marriage is over because all they're doing is blaming. Yeah, it hurts a lot. That's what you have to tell him. Yeah, expect your husband to be perfect, yeah. Right. Well, Krishna Karshani, it's too late now. You could have married a perfect husband, but you didn't. What to do? You had your chance. But there's Krishna, so you can marry him. Yes. Okay, so let's end class so we can end on time. And I'm going to finish my rounds, and hopefully if I'm still awake and my mind is still working, get this office in order. And we're going to put curtains back here because this light coming in, it's not good for the videos, and it'll be more visually pleasing. And then we might put a plant back there. Then we'll have a nice bookcase, and it'll be more pleasing to look. How to deal with people. Same way that I told Sangita. What's wrong? Let's talk. Seems like something's really upsetting you. What are you frustrated about? Here's another thing that I was told by a godsister of mine who is a counselor. She said that when people blame, they're in pain and they use blame to numb the pain. So knowing that, you can ask, what's bothering you? How can I help you? Okay. If I don't end now, we'll have questions all night. So we're going to end now, okay? And then tomorrow, if you want more, come back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, New York time, and we'll be here, ready to go. with another show of Laugh Your Way Back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.